much more difficult way. The difficult way involves a certain number of topics that I would like to elaborate on very briefly. First of all, we need to include in the European tool the fair and equitable treatment standards, which is not included in all the already existing national bilateral agreements, but we need to include it at European level. We need to protect the European investors from expropriations. This is a delicate and sensitive issue, but we have to include in that terms at least three main streams. The first one, we need to define expropriation. Because expropriation could, or we can be tempted to include in expropriation everything, but everything is not the position. Expropriation must be clearly defined, and the reasons for that should be clearly known in advance. We cannot rely on interpretation on national security reasons made by any head of government of a different country that at a certain point decides that whatever investment that we are talking about is a question of national security. We must define expropriations, the reason for expropriation in advance. We need to have a clear rule of compensation of expropriation. In case of, should an expropriation take place, we need to have rules that accommodate expropriation reimbursement through a real market value, fair and real, which is again something which is not always taken into consideration. We need to include the umbrella clause in the EU instrument. This is another important element that sometimes, for shorten our ways, we have not included in the bilateral agreements. Then we need to ensure an appropriate dispute resolution, dispute settlement mechanism between investor and state. Problems might arise on the market. As business representative or investors representative, we know that markets sometimes are difficult, but the major difficulties might arise when you have a dispute with the government, with the state of the country where you have invested your money. And there also, there are a certain number of instruments that we must consider and include in our investment protection strategy. I don't know if you are perfectly aware of the amount of work that this would require. The work has started indeed back in 2010, but there are forecasts that the entire process of passing through the bilateral 1,200, whatever they are, to the European tools might take up to 10 years. Then the problem is, what ahead we will be doing for the next 7 years? And this is not something in a time where investments are required, and in both directions, by the way. European investment as the largest investor in the world abroad, but also foreign investment in Europe. And we do have this gray zone today, where investors, long-term investors specifically, they tend to take cautions in what they do, because protection is not defined yet up to a level. And in case of, still today, you might run into problems. Besides the trade defense instrument, a specific instrument for investment protections, it is not effective enough as the investors require. So my call is really to push our political decisions to take the hard way, to negotiate as fast as they can with the relevant countries. We cannot do this with the entire world in a week. We have a capacity issue, a capacity problem. So we need to make a priority list, select those countries where sort of a matrix investors are more interested in, problems might be higher, and try to find a priority list of countries where we start immediately to put in place the European investment strategy, the European investment policy, and the European protection investment policy. This is a requirement from the European business community, which is very sensitive, because unless those requirements, the risk is that the flow of investment that have been able to make our economies growing for the past centuries will decline considerably. And then we will pay cash for this